It's been great news, but something that we've been waiting for the last 8 years. So I think there is at least partial closure for our quest.
How, what sort of program would you feel is the right way forward in terms of quickly identifying antiquities that may have been, acquired through looting channels, illegal channels down, over the years?
Well, the first thing is we are actually doing the job of the National Gallery and also their provenance researchers. So, for example, the current restitution includes a sculpture that is going back to Gujarat, which is the home state of our Prime Minister. And the paperwork that came with that sculpture is exactly the same paperwork that was used to sell artifact, which was the Ardhanari or the half Shiva, half Parvati sculpture to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which was restituted to India in 2014. So that means it's taken almost 8 years for you to return an object which had basically the same fake paperwork that you accepted and returned in 2014. So, it's number one. Number two, most of the current disclosures and restitutions are coming from museum acquisitions because I believe the museum feels it is answerable for the public funds they used to purchase these artifacts. But then we would like it to be more, not just cover the Kapoor scandal, because Kapoor is a medium-sized dealer. So there are other dealers, and obviously when I say your Australian museums provenance verification has already been found lacking in a lot of aspects. So I think if you want to clean up, might as well clean up the whole house, and that includes gifts and artifacts that were sent or purchased. Not technically, they come free from rich donors, but they're breaks, which is in essence public money. Yeah. So I would like Australian museums to also discuss not just ones that they bought for cash in the open market, but also items that they acquired via the gifts route.
So that's a big project you're talking about, and also a lot of money that is already being spent. Would there be another way of going about it in perhaps requesting that these works are on loan from India or from other places where they've been, sort of acquired from?
Sure. So the first point is, for example, I am from a state of Tamil Nadu, which is receiving two bronze sculptures in today's restitution. These bronze sculptures are called Tirumeni in my native Tamil tongue, which literally translates to being bodies of God. So they are considered to be living gods in the temples they were worshipped with. That you see them as objects of art is incidental. They were never created to be objects of art. So they belong to the temple, they are property of the temple. They are not even property of the Indian state. They are property of the temple, and this has been established in courts. So that means even the government of India has no authority to decide where they should be, and their only place is in the sanctum. But having said that, we also have a lot of excavated artifacts that are similar in nature that are currently housed in our stock in museums. I believe a better way, like other countries have done, like Singapore has a very active long-term loan program with the Archaeological Survey of India. So I believe the better way is return these, which are basically, because you should understand that these are criminal properties, and we go by the logic that once an object is stolen, you can never get sound title. So they need to come back to stand trial as evidence so that we can go after the perpetrators of the crime. But in return, Australia could work directly with the government, not clandestinely like what was been attempted earlier to go with, for example, the museum directly work with an archive by giving them a grant to allow them access to check their archive. So these are background routes where they're trying to do what custodians should do, not a buyer would do. I believe that Australia has a definite way to request Indian government. It is also beneficial for us because like wildlife, when the buying stops, the killing stops. So if there is an active long-term loan program, we are effectively killing these $5 million purchases which are robbing poor temples back in India.
And that's such a great point, because part of it is to be more vigilant about where you're making those acquisitions. And there are these fairly sophisticated programs that run, and how easy is it to be constantly aware of how you're acquiring some of these works?
Well, if you take the 22 objects that are under question right now from Kapoor, I would believe that if you spend 5 minutes on them, the paperwork, you would spot that there was no attempt to even conceal that this paperwork was done basically for optical due diligence. And and I'm not saying it's the end of it. We're talking about, for example, we call it the Nandi, the Chola bull, which was not from Subhash Kapoor, but from another dealer that came in through the gifts program. And when the NGA put out the due diligence report, they actually redacted a very key sentence. And the sentence was that during the time of acquisition, the staff doing the due diligence noticed the signatures were different. So why would you redact such a crucial part of evidence and then put it out to the public saying, I've done a good job?
Yeah.
So I believe that.
Tell us, though, I mean, how do you think we're stacking up against other countries in terms of trying to address this and redress it?
I would say that Australia has done a lot of good and bad because a lot of big bucks were spent. Australia has spent a lot of money, I would say, way over and above the market. And that is another point of grudge we hold, because right now you're only doing a provenance audit and not a financial audit. At least 3 of the objects that they bought, they paid like 8 times the market price because those objects were bought in a public auction. Within 8 months, they were sold back to the NGA at these ridiculously high prices. So our main point of concern is that, the sense that you don't spend this kind of money, and they did it in a very short period and basically concentrating on high-risk objects with a provenance that had no backup for 40 years. The UN statuette basically comes in here as a 1970 kind of a watermark. All the objects they acquired were supposed to be pre-1970, but they were never seen till they bought it in 2000. It cannot be that suddenly a 5 million object that's been kept in somewhere comes out of the blue. I believe that this was easily, they could have found it if they were really diligent. The problem lies in India as well. We have not been diligent in going after heritage criminals, but at least now I think the tide is changing. Yeah. Europe is waking up. America is waking up because they do know that art is linked, smuggled illicit art is linked to money laundering and also to terrorism financing. So I believe all this will combine and a lot more objects will come home.
Let's hope so. Vijay, a great campaign that you're on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.